Hello, you're listening to Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, a weekly podcast designed to bring you snippets of encouragement to help you as you go about your day. I'm Jenny Guy, your host. We're nearing the end of this series titled A Balancing Act, in which we're looking at the Apostle John's prayer that our souls would prosper even as we prosper in the other areas of our lives. Today, we'll examine the role our emotions play in helping our souls to prosper. Let's get started. We're almost at the end of this series titled A Balancing Act. The series was prompted by the Apostle John's prayer that we prosper in all things and be in health, even as our soul prospers. We're learning that the soul has three components: our mind, our will, and our emotions. For our soul to prosper, each component has to function well and be in balance with the others. This week, we're looking at the role our emotions play in helping us to have a prosperous soul. There are so many emotions. Where do I start? Which ones do I include in this episode? It might be helpful to use the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes, verses 1 through 8, as our guide through life's situations and emotions. I'm reading from the New International Version. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. In writing about actions and seasons, such as a time to tear down and a time to build, or a time to plant and a time to uproot, the writer of Ecclesiastes isn't shying away from emotions, for they are implicitly embedded in those actions and seasons. Think about planting and uprooting, for example. This happens when a family leaves one community in which they have lived for years and moves to another because of a job or a military assignment. Feelings of sadness, hope, and expectation are often packed along with the family's belongings. By saying that everything has a season, Ecclesiastes is advising us to recognize the seasons of our lives and the emotions that accompany them. While Ecclesiastes is careful not to say how long a season will or should last, he is careful to encourage us to recognize when the seasons in our lives are changing, to understand when the time for feeling and expressing certain emotions is over, and it's time to move on. We create problems for ourselves when we aren't mindful of the seasons in our lives and, as a result, allow ourselves to get stuck in them. If we're not careful, getting stuck in a season may also mean getting stuck in its emotions. Consider verse 4 again as an example of what I mean. It says, "A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance." If we are always weeping and mourning, then we miss the good times life offers us, the times when we can and should laugh and even dance, regardless of whether we have rhythm or not. Or look at verse 5. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. We have many reasons to hug the people in our lives. We hug those to whom we are romantically attached because we love them. We hug our children and our parents when we're happy. We hug our friends when we're celebrating. We can even hug our enemies when we have resolved our differences and are now seeking peace. Just as there are many reasons and emotions that prompt us to embrace others, Ecclesiastes also tells us to recognize those times when it isn't appropriate to hug. Ecclesiastes is an excellent guide for helping us to identify the seasons of our lives and their emotions. Other books in the Bible, however, also give us plenty of guidance on how to handle our emotions, especially toxic ones like fear and anger. Fear is common in life. I don't know how many verses the Bible has that address fear, but it's a lot. I tried looking the number up and found several answers. Some writers say there are 365, one verse for every day in the year, while others dispute that number. Though there may not be agreement on the number of verses dealing with fear, there is agreement that admonitions to not entertain fear are quite plentiful, because fear will paralyze us if we don't handle it. For example, there's the fear of success, where we don't try as hard as we can because we believe that we won't be able to handle the attention that success brings. There's fear of failure. Often we don't try at all because we don't want to face negative comments or criticisms when our attempts don't meet others or even our own expectations. Then there's the fear of others' opinions of us. If we're not careful, this can turn into people-pleasing and govern every decision we make. The list of fears is long. God takes the emotion of fear very seriously and doesn't want us to be stopped by it. So he gives us plenty of verses to encourage us as we go through life. Two of my favorite scriptures are found in the first chapter of Joshua, verses 7 and 9. They read, "Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." That's quite an antidote to fear. God Himself has promised that He will be with us wherever we go. Then there is anger. Medicine is acknowledging the connection between several ailments and anger. Problems such as headaches, insomnia, increased anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, and even heart attack are shown to be linked to anger that has been allowed to move in and make its home in us. As we look at the damage that anger can do, we would be wise to heed the advice Paul gives us in Ephesians, the 4th chapter and the 16th verse. He writes, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry." Paul is saying that anger happens. There will always be situations and people who will deliberately take our last nerve, twist it, and step on it. But we aren't supposed to let our anger drive our responses and actions, causing us to do things that we will later regret or pay for dearly. Paul is telling us that the best way to deal with our anger is to try to find some type of resolution quickly. Just as the Bible records the damage caused by indulging negative emotions, it also records the benefits of positive emotions. The 17th chapter of Proverbs and the 22nd verse says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine." Norman Cousins proved the truth of this statement when he used laughter to help cure a rare disease that threatened his life. He was given only a few months to live. Cousins reasoned that since stress had helped cause the disease, then positive emotions should help cure it. Therefore, he prescribed for himself a regimen of constant laughter through viewing humorous films. Within 6 months, he had made remarkable progress, and within 2 years, he was back on his job as the editor of the Saturday Review. Cousins wrote a book about his experience called Anatomy of an Illness. I could go on talking about emotions and the critical role feelings play in our lives, but I'll stop here. I hope you'll be encouraged to look at your life's seasons and their emotions. Are you stuck anywhere? Do you see where you need to move on? If you find that you need to make some changes, then be encouraged by remembering that God is with you wherever you go. I hope you heard something today that has encouraged you and possibly given you something new to think about that will motivate or inspire you. If you would like a PDF copy of the show notes for this episode of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, visit my website at jguypublisher.com. New episodes are published each week on Wednesday. I hope you'll join me for another installment of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, be encouraged.